Welcome to Presence Redesign. On this channel, we curate your presence so it's something that you're intentional about and not something that is created by default. So I just had this thought today and I thought I'd jump on here and talk about this. So, we think 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of those thoughts on a daily basis are the same. So, when you see people and they're just in a loop, right? And they're in a situation about something and they can't stop the thinking and the talking and everything. They cycle and they cycle. Well, the reason for that is because, so many times on these channels, I hear people talk about self-image and self-concept, and the importance of that is monumental because it's very foundational into how we show up and how we approach our life. It's all about how we see ourselves in any given situation. We're dynamic human beings and we change in each situation, but having an understanding of how we're seeing ourselves in those situations is really paramount. So Dr. Maxwell Maltz wrote a book back in the 60s called Psycho-Cybernetics, and he was a plastic surgeon, and he argued that he would have people come in right to the office, and he'd have them do these physical alterations to their body. And he said, they'd come in my office and they would say things like, oh my gosh, this is going to change my life. And for a very few amount of people, it actually did. But for many people, it didn't change anything, right? Because they never saw themselves differently in the situation, and their physical appearance just didn't map back to that. So he created the psycho-cybernetic loop. And that loop looks like this. You have a self-image, right? A self-concept, a way you see yourself in any given situation. And from that self-image belief system made up of all these beliefs we have, you have your thoughts, right? Those generate a specific thought about a specific situation. And from those thoughts, you are going to have emotions, right, that embody that thought. And from those emotions, you're going to take action. And the result you get is just going to be congruent with the original belief system that you had. And it's so true. And today I was walking and I was dealing with this one situation, and I started to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole. And I'm like, oh, there I go. I'm embodying an emotion because I see myself in this situation in one way, and that's not really coherent to the way that I want to see myself. So I'm going to change that. And when you change that and you cut the loop, you change how you see yourself in that situation, only then can you generate a different thought. But when you're in a loop and you're seeing these things and you're seeing yourself the same way over and over and over again, you can't cut that loop. You have to have the awareness of the way that you see yourself in this situation. I talk about this in my course, but I had this story about this woman who mirrored this so perfectly. I was working with her. She was a new product manager for a fairly large company, and she had just gotten promoted, and she went in and did a big launch. But she was plagued with imposter syndrome. She got this promotion. She didn't really believe she was worth it. She didn't believe she was ready. But she took the job, and she got the job over quite a few other people. And so she goes in and she delivers her pitch, and all went well, right? By all intents and purposes, it was a pretty good pitch, and she was feeling okay about it. And when she walked out, this other woman who had also gone for her job but didn't get it kind of gave her this weird look, and that just put her down a rabbit hole, right? We've all kind of probably been there, right? So she gets in the car and she's driving home, and she starts having these thoughts that are just going, and now it's taken a life of its own, right? It's on autopilot. She's having these thoughts. She sees herself with this imposter syndrome. She couldn't really articulate it at the time, but that's how she sees herself in the situation. So all she can think about are thoughts that support that, right? That's all she can think about. And now she's going to get emotional about it, and those emotions are embodying those thoughts. So as she's driving home, she gets a ding on her phone, and it's her boss. And he sent an email and he said, can you send me the budget for the launch? That's all it said. And for the reasons that I just talked about, she was so not objective, right? I've talked about this in other videos, where the whole point in understanding your presence is to get you to a place where you're objective so you can respond and not react. She could not be objective because she had a train that left the station in her head. And so she pulled over and she just let off this defensive email and, justifying this, justifying that, and, went off the rails with it. And she undid a lot of the work that she originally had done so well. And it took her over a week to to tighten that back up and get back on board with it. But, had she taken the moment and taken a pause and said, okay, how am I seeing myself in this situation? And is that coherent to who I really am? And am I being objective? Then she would have been able to like cut the cycle, right? And she would have been able to take a beat and respond and not react. But we think, our thinking, we get in the way of ourselves because of our thinking. And if you can just take a second and be like, hold on a second, when you start to feel like, I've talked about this before, where you get like a physical sensation when something is resistance is creeping up inside of you, right? You start to feel it physically. And so if you can just get really clear and aware of what that feeling is, and then be like, wait, what am I thinking right now? And is it true? And is what I'm thinking actually lining up to who I am in this situation? And if it isn't, then you got to do the work to change who you are in that situation so that you can start to have different thoughts, right? Our nervous system is like a servo mechanism. It's just going to follow the direction we give it based on the way we see ourselves. And so that awareness, I think, is really, really important. And it's a work in progress. I mean, I'm definitely not perfect at it, but I'm really aware of it. And I have corrected, I shouldn't even say corrected, I have been proactive about many things in my life that I used to just be reactive over. And then a lot of things too, I've just decided it's just not worth my energy because our energy is expensive. Taylor Swift actually just said that. She said, your energy is expensive. Be exclusive with who you share it with. And I 100% agree with that, right? Access to that energy is a privilege, not a right. So don't allow everybody to get up in your skin and give you so much resistance that you carry in your body. Be really particular about where you spend your thoughts and how you spend them, and what they do to you and what they do for you. So anyway, that's all I had for you today. I hope you guys are having a great day. It's really pretty here in the Pacific Northwest.